music and money, and is it okay as a musician to get paid? And it seems like it's such a taboo thing to talk about, and there's 8 million opinions on how that should work and how somebody should go about making money, or if they should make money at all, because it's art, and how do you put a price on art? And you should just do it for the love of it and all of those things, which is fine if I love doing music and playing the drums, and I love teaching, and I love recording, and I love playing shows. And as much as I love that, I cannot let that eclipse the fact that I have a wife and 4 kids and a mortgage and power bills and all of those things. And I see my neighbor Linda is here. Hi, Linda. She is awesome. And we enjoy our neighbors. My neighbors are the coolest neighbors. I know everybody probably says it, but literally I have, like, all my neighbors are friends, and it's really, really cool. And some of them have been here on our block when our houses were all being built at the same time in the year 2000. That's how long we've all lived here. And yeah, I love my neighborhood. At any rate, so I was talking about, I can't let my love of this art of music and all of that eclipse the fact that I'm in business. This is my job. Doing music is my job. So yes, I have to pay my mortgage, and I have to pay my power bill, and buy groceries, provide the money for the groceries. I don't do the grocery shopping, although Mary would probably appreciate it if I did. But she's usually the one that's taking care of all of those things. So is it okay to charge to play music? Yes, it is okay. Now, depending on what level you are as a musician, that's going to affect, where you're playing and what you might get paid and what you can charge and all of those kind of things. There's David's here. David, dig those guys. Saw those guys play almost 2 years ago at Lewis. And yes, David, everyone loves a villain. They're really, really great. And George Silva, who plays guitar in that band, he played guitar in a band called 5 Foot Thick. And 5 Foot Thick was a Jägermeister sponsored band, as was Midline. And so when 5 Foot Thick and Midline were both Jägermeister bands, and we were both playing on some of these Jägermeister tours, and sometimes part of those tours together, and sometimes we put our own little stint of shows together with 5 Foot Thick. And so we got to know those guys really well. And of course now George is in Everyone Loves a Villain, and those guys are super cool. And their bass player, Joel, he was the drummer in another band called the Failsafe Project. That was the band in between 5 Foot Thick and Everyone Loves a Villain. George, if you see this, I apologize because I forgot there momentarily. Anyway, yes, David, Everyone Loves a Villain is awesome. So, getting back from having these squirrel moments. So for me, I've always wanted to play the drums, and I always have played the drums. I've been playing the drums for 40 years and have done some cool things. And now that I'm a full-time musician and have been for about a year and a half, I love life, and my wife is an amazing wife and an amazing business partner too, because she's the one who does all of our work here in the studio, capturing the recordings and then oftentimes doing the mixing. And we've made some huge strides in our studio here, well beyond my expectations that I had for it initially. And now that we have some traction going and we see how things are progressing, it's getting more and more exciting on like what we are capable of doing. And so going back to, I started to mention, like, musicians at different levels of the game are going to be experiencing different financial situations, I guess. So there's the free giveaway shows, which, sometimes those are okay to do. It just depends, like, what is the benefit of doing that, And Chris is here. Chris, I've been talking about your band, buddy. Chris, if you guys see Chris on here, he is the singer for Everyone Loves a Villain, and you should go follow their page and follow all of their music platforms, Spotify or Apple Music, wherever you stream music. You won't be disappointed. And Chris is an amazing vocalist. Those guys are super awesome. Chris, I was just saying that hopefully in the near future, Midline and Everyone Loves a Villain can start doing some shows together. That would be awesome. I would love to do that. And I was just talking about George messages me every once in a while about making that happen. So, again, I got distracted because when my friends pop up here, especially friends that I love dearly, I have to say hi. So, I see Mike Fevela's here. Mike, hope you are doing awesome. Mike is an awesome bass player, lives on the East Coast. He's a New Jersey boy, and that guy's had a lot of music success too, and he has high standards, and I always appreciate musicians like Mike here. He's a righteous dude. So yes, we sometimes do shows for free. You know, maybe we are trying to break into a new market, or maybe we're opening up for a national act, and there's going to be thousands of people, and you hope to make up some kind of money in merchandise sales. But how do you be a musician and pay your mortgage and take care of your family and all of those things? So those were questions I was asking myself, 2 years ago, like, how do I transition into being a full-time musician? So I sought the advice of people who are already doing that, who are already successful musicians making a living playing music. And so I followed the advice of those people to the letter. And it all started with teaching drum lessons my main source of income, my main job. And so there was a lot of moving parts into making that happen, but I did it, and now I love teaching. I've talked about, like, why do I teach, or if I was qualified to teach. I did that a couple videos ago. And excuse me. So loving to teach is really important, and so that allowed me to have a base to what I make financially. And then on top of it, we started developing this recording studio and offering recording, remote sessions, recording drum tracks for people and their songs. And so now I get people will send me music. Sometimes they're very specific on what they want. Sometimes they want me to just do my thing. There's a lot of different dynamics in there. So, but I'm providing a service, just like I did when I owned my own landscaping company. If somebody wanted a paver patio or a new fence or new trees or whatever, I would go and see what they wanted, and I would bid that job, and I would bid that to be profitable, and I would give them this bid, and this is what I charge. And they would either accept it or they wouldn't. There wasn't all this emotion involved in this process. They were going to find a landscape company that was going to provide this service, and they were going to find out who they were comfortable with and who they were comfortable with, to spend that kind of money on landscaping. So it's the same with music. I have a rate sheet, which was heavily encouraged by mentors that I was mentioning earlier. So it's just like a menu board. If you go to a restaurant and you have a menu, or there's a menu board, and you say, I want these things, and you start looking around and you see what they cost and you add those up, and that's what you get. You don't walk in to a restaurant and be handed a menu that has the pricing for a steak on there, and you see, oh, this steak, this plate, this steak with this potato is $28. Okay? You probably know going into a restaurant what you might expect to pay price-wise, because if you go to a nice steakhouse, you're going to pay nice steakhouse prices. If you go to McDonald's, you're not going to find this steak that you want on their menu. So you go to the nice steakhouse. So when people come to me and they say, I want drum tracks for one song, I have a rate for that. If they say, I want you to record drum tracks for this one song, and I would love it if you did a video of the recording session, there's an add-on price for that. Then, if they want a stereo drum mix sent to them, something that's already mixed and ready to go. We have a mixing fee, so there's an additional charge. It's just like picking from a menu. I have a rate sheet, and I say, this is what it's going to cost you. And more often than not, they go, great, when can you start? And we just go from there. Now, if they have multiple songs they want done, I have a rate for that as well. And occasionally, so those people, first of all, the ones that I give them my rate, they say, great, let's go ahead and book it. There's some discussion like how I'm going to be paid. You know, is it cash, check, Venmo, those kind of things. Depending on the circumstance, I might get a partial payment up front and the rest on the end. Sometimes it's all on the back end. Sometimes clients prefer to pay all up front because they want to guarantee their spot, you know. And so I just work with them. Now, the people that come back and start negotiating with me on pricing, they're typically the ones that don't end up hiring me. Well, I know I wanted this $28 steak, but I really wanted to just pay a McDonald's price. I want to pay for a Happy Meal price, you know. Can you work with me? What if I buy you 12 Happy Meals instead of the one steak price? Like, no, I have to take care of my family. So I leave the emotion. When people start negotiating with me, or they try to sell me on an idea like, these songs are great, they're going to get all this radio play, or these songs are great, I'm going to win a Grammy with this song. Those are all perfect things, and if that happens, great. My rate is my rate. So when people are trying to dispute or negotiate something less, that doesn't mean that I go to my mortgage company and say, well, you know, I know this is a nice house and it's worth every penny, but this month, you know, people negotiated, so I don't have as much money, so the mortgage company should now be okay with me not wanting to pay as much, right? No, that's not how that works. So, and same with live shows as well. You know, you want to go and play. Maybe this venue over here is not paying any bands, or another venue over here is paying $400. So if you have a 4-piece band and everybody's making $100 and you're a cover band, well, now you're working 3 hours just to play. That doesn't include the time to get there and the time to set up and the time to tear down and the time to drive home. So maybe by the end of the day, you're into that gig 6, 7, 8 hours, depending on where it is. Is that 8 hours of time worth $100 to you? So if it was 4 hours, you made $25 an hour, I guess. That's not too bad. But if it was 8 hours, now you're down to, well, what's half of 25? It's like $12.50 an hour. Okay, it's getting lower. What if you had to play 4 sets? You know, 6 hours and $100. So start doing the math, musician friends. Start seeing what your time is worth. Now, a lot of us musicians, because I used to be in that spot too, maybe you had your day job and it pays you extremely well, you know. And so for you to go play music, the money side might not be as important. My wife is looking at me with weird faces. Now she's laughing. Well, because you're looking at me. See, she's looking at me, I'm looking at her. She probably doesn't care about anything that I'm saying. But when I see, she's in the control room, and so it's kind of hard to hear what's being said back and forth. Now she's intentionally not looking at me. Oh. But she was looking at me from behind the glass going, see, she's still doing it. Oh, I thought I almost saw a bird fly in that room. Oh, man. Oh, Robin's here, Mary. Robin's here. She really wants Robin really wants Mary to join me for coffee with Fred. I don't know. I'm kind of selfish that way. See, I went from totally being serious about money to this woman in here is a riot. in many ways. So at any rate, musicians, start doing the math on what you're doing and decide if it makes sense. Of course, if you're a brand new band, maybe you're not really great at your instrument yet, the band's kind of loose, those kind of things. Your professional level isn't where it needs to be, so you're not going to be worth as much as a well-polished, tight band who's done it for a while, who's very professional. Like, consider the quality of the sound that you're making, and how you guys look on stage. All of that stuff is really, really important to adding value to yourself as a musician and as a band. And so now I'm living in that world as a musician for hire, teaching drum lessons, recording for people. Sometimes we have recording clients that come in here and they use our studio, and we put something together that I'm not personally even involved with musically, but they're here to use our gear, and they know the product that Mary's going to put together for them, and they're willing to pay our rate. So as our studio gets more and more traction and the quality of stuff continues to go up, then it would make sense to charge more for those things, right? As it should be for everybody who's in the music business. Like, all my musician heroes are rich. They're not starving musicians trying to get by. They live in a nice house, they drive nice cars, they have nice clothes, and all of that stuff. There's no reason for any of us not to be in that same situation. But you can't get there by playing the starving musician card because you're suffering for your art. I don't like to suffer. I've suffered plenty in my life. I've suffered financially. I've suffered physically. It seems like the lower you are on the totem pole and all of this, the more garbage you have to deal with. I wouldn't say that really successful musicians don't deal with any garbage. They deal with different garbage. Maybe their garbage is nicer. But there's trash pickups once a week, so get rid of the garbage. Just put it out at the road and gone. Don't deal with that anymore. So, yeah, I maybe I was venting a little bit, because when somebody's beating me up over my rate, that doesn't help me. That doesn't help my family. And usually those people too, you end up not wanting to work with them, because if you budge on your numbers, then they want you to budge in other areas. So my rate includes a general time frame that I can accomplish recording a song. So if somebody sends me a song, or where they approach me about recording a song, I'll say, let me hear what the song is. Do you have a rough idea that you can send me? And first of all, see if I want to be involved with it. If they send me a 17-minute long prog metal song that's like Dream Theater or something, I'm probably not your drummer that can handle that, and it's just not something I want to do with. Now, if you send me a song that's between 3 and 5 minutes long, and it's a country song, or it's a rock song, hard rock song, funk, those kind of things, that's all in my wheelhouse. And I know that it's going to take me a certain amount of time to do this on average. On average, that was the word I was looking for. So the guy that beats me up on price, now he's going to want to have his fingers in there more, which is, I appreciate when an artist is involved and they have a specific thing that they're after, and all of that's fine because I'm working for them. But over the years, in an average, I know it's going to take me X amount of hours to accomplish this task, and I'm going to charge for that. So when somebody starts beating me up on price, then they're going to want more time from me as well. So they tend to get more nitpicky about things. Maybe stuff that's not even relevant. Maybe they want to absorb my time telling me about all their horrible experiences with somebody else. I'm really not interested in those kind of stories. Like, I don't want to be on either side of the fence of those conversations, especially if I know those two people. Like, I know this artist and I know this other person. I don't want those thoughts in my mind I really don't. I really don't. I'm only concerned about my relationship with that person at that time. So, musicians, get your rate sheet, just like if it was a menu, and say, I'm going to do these things. Like if I call any of the local production companies, and there are a few, let's see, I need sound, I need a front of house guy, I need a monitor tech, we want a light. So there's maybe 4 people involved, and they're going to bring all this equipment. Maybe they're staging too. So I'm going to call them and I'm going to say, I need these things on this date, and what is that going to cost your production company to do that for me? They're going to say, Fred, we love your band, love working for you. We can provide you a stage of this size, of this height, lighting, sound, and it's going to be $8,000. I'm just throwing that number out there. Great. I don't come back to them and say, oh man, you know, this was a thing that I was hoping that you guys would just do, you know, to help us out. Or, man, we were hoping for $500. Believe me, I've been around this business long enough to know that an order of that magnitude is going to cost money. It's a lot different than if you hire a smaller sound company that's going to go throw up a sound system for you for a bar gig. You know, maybe there's no subs, a couple monitors, very low-key stuff. There's no lighting, there's no staging, and they're going to charge money for that. They're going to have a rate for that. So us as musicians need to be paid for our time and our talents, and it's okay. It's perfectly okay to get paid. So I would say go out there and whatever your name is, like I see Will Mac is on here watching. Let's say that it's Will Mac Incorporated. Be Will Mac Incorporated and present yourself like a business. Ever since I started taking myself seriously as a business, everything's just gotten better and better and better. So, can you be music and money? They can mix. Just be able to separate. This is the music side, and then the other side of that is you're a business, and be in business. I think if everybody was actually in business, things would be a lot smoother and a lot less loosey-goosey. So, there you go. So Midline, we sent off our song to be mixed, and we have it back. We ended up sending our tracks to Chris Collier, who is a mixing and recording engineer. And if you're not familiar with who Chris Collier is, I'm going to tell you right now who he is. Chris Collier is a recording mixing engineer who did all 3 of the KXM records. If you don't know who KXM is, that's Doug Pinnick from King's X, Ray Luzier, who's the drummer for Korn, and then George Lynch from Dokken and Lynch Mob. Those 3 guys got together and did 3 records. So Chris recorded and mixed all of those records. And he's done the last couple Korn records, White Snake, Prong, amongst many other independent artists such as Midline. And I actually had worked with Chris 9 years ago or so. After the X Drive recordings were done, I went and recorded 18 songs with Chris for the guitar player from X Drive. And we had recorded those 18 songs the day after Chris was done recording the first KXM record. And so I was riding in Chris's car with him in LA, going to the studio, and we're driving there. And so I was asking about what the drum situation was. And he said, man, we got a room full of all kinds of different drum kits and cymbals. You can assemble whatever you want. He goes, however, Ray Luzier's drums are there. And if his drum set's still there, then you can just play Ray's drums. Which I kind of laughed, just like I am now. I was like, okay, imagine I'm recording. I got the cans on, I'm recording away, and watch Ray Luzier from Korn walk in the door, and I'm playing his drums. And Chris said, no, I know Ray really well. It'll be totally fine. So when we got to the studio, Ray's drums were gone, and we had just missed meeting up by 20 minutes or something. He had already been there and picked up his drums and left. And I've had 5 or 6 of those moments where Ray Luzier and I were just passing, and I still haven't met him. I messaged him a couple different times on Facebook, and we've laughed about missing that because we worked with a lot of the same people. So anyway, those albums that Chris Collier worked on sounded great, so we ended up sending those tracks, midline tracks, to Chris. And part of what I was hoping, not that Mary couldn't mix midline stuff and do a great job, I was really interested in knowing, like, when I'm sending drum tracks off to some of these people, I don't know who's ends up mixing them. Maybe the artist I'm working for is mixing them, or they're sending it off to another engineer. All of that stuff is out of my control, and a lot of times I don't know. I'm really early in the process of some of these people's recordings, because they'll get the drums and then they're going back and redoing bass and guitars and vocals and some of the stuff I never even hear. And some of the stuff I get back and hear and go, oh, that's great. I forgot I did that 6 months ago. Or, this all stuff takes time. So I had already had a relationship with Chris and had worked with him. And Chris is also a drummer, and he plays bass and guitar, and he's a singer, and he's just multi-talented guy. And so when we sent these midline tracks off to him, we had Scott Alexander from Dishwalla play bass on that. And a lot of the local musicians know of Scott because Scott's lived here in Boise for quite some time now, and I've been really fortunate to become friends with him and do a lot of different musical things with Scott. And he's another person that's kind of a mentor for me, as well as an awesome friend and bass player. So he played bass on the new midline stuff, and then of course we had JB's guitar recordings and Anthony's vocals. So I wanted to send that to Chris, not only to mix, but to get feedback from him on the quality of the drum tracks that I'm providing. Were they recorded well? Were they tuned well? He's already worked with me. He knows I can play the drums, and we play everything to the click and all of those things. So we got the mix back, and no changes. Everything sounded amazing right out of the gate. So I called Mary, and I got on a conference call with Chris yesterday because Mary's doing this engineering. And so Chris is really at that higher level of mix engineers. And so I got Chris on the phone and, made arrangements to pay him and all of that kind of stuff. And then we got feedback on the tracks. And he said, first of all, the bass track was really, really good. And when you guys eventually hear this mix, because we're not going to release it for a little while still, the low end is so full and warm, but the clarity of everything is amazing. And that's because of the bass track that Scott was able to provide. And it made Chris's job really easy. Then we talked about the drums. He said, man, the drums were tuned great. They're mic'd really well. The recordings were super clean. He didn't really have any criticism of that whatsoever, because these mix engineers get sent tracks, and usually it's the drum tracks are the worst, because a lot of people don't have the equipment or the room to record drums in. I have the equipment and the room to record. This room has these panels on the wall and stuff, and it's all designed to make this room sound great, to capture great drum sounds. And so it was nice to get that feedback from Chris that we're doing all the right things, and that it made his job so much easier. And then as Mary's becoming a mix engineer herself, he gave her some pointers on, there were like 2 or 3 extra steps that maybe we could do on our end before we send tracks off to somebody, that just makes the mix engineer's job so much easier. And without spending an hour talking about that, we're just going to do what Chris suggested, and it's gonna up our game even more here. Like, because I told Chris, I said, I want to send drum tracks to producers and mix and recording engineers of all levels, and that they get drum tracks that are almost just drop in place tracks. Like Chris said, very little EQing that he had to do, everything cleaned up really fast and super easy. That's why he was able to return a mix to us so quick. Where some of these mix engineers get recordings and they have to doctor everything to make it usable. And sometimes it's the playing, but more often than not, it's just the source sound is not what it should be. And so that's a lot of times where these drum sample replacement things start to happen. those who aren't involved in the recording world who might be watching here, you can record, and then the computer recognizes what you recorded, and then they replace that sound with the sampled sound, computer generated sound, or something that was recorded in another studio. So they call those drum samples. So with what I was able to send them, that was almost a non-existent thing. Sometimes there's a little something that's added just to add a little more punch or attack to something, but it's not replacing my sounds, which that's a great thing to be able to do. Remote recording is to provide really great drum tracks that sound really great, sound really clean. And so Mary and I were like, okay, there's a victory for us because we're doing the right things. And like I said, she's awesome, and we have this great partnership, not only as husband and wife and parents, but as business owners together. And Mary's a very accomplished musician and singer in her own right. And that just makes our working environment super cool. Yes, we do get on each other's nerves. Remember I said a few videos ago we took that till death do us part seriously, and we've been trying to kill each other ever since. See, she just peeked around. I got the eye. Can anybody else raise their eyebrow like this? Mary can't. She'll try to raise her eyebrow. She'll be looking like this going, am I doing it? Am I doing it? Am I doing it? Like, no, it's like that. She's going like this. Actually, I think she went like this. There's more birds flying in the control room. We got to get those birds out of there, Mare. Well, what? Did I just see another one? I think that canary's going to die.